I'm going to write the complete 9,500-word story based on your outline and requirements. I'll write it part by part with each section flowing naturally into the next while avoiding repetition. My name is Jean. I'm 54 years old, and I was supposed to be celebrating my 30th wedding anniversary and 55th birthday. After decades as a hospital administrator, I thought I knew disappointment, but nothing prepared me for seeing my husband's pregnant mistress walk into my party on my sister Amanda's arm. They expected tears as seeing my humiliation. They didn't expect what I had planned. If you're watching from somewhere comfortable, go ahead and hit subscribe, maybe grab something to drink. This story of betrayal and unexpected strength is just beginning. I met Thomas in college back when his hair was longer and my dreams were bigger. We were 21, studying at the same university in Portland. I was pursuing healthcare administration, and he was in pre-law. Our meeting was ordinary, almost forgettable, at a mutual friend's study group. But something clicked between us, a comfortable understanding that grew into love over coffee study sessions and late-night walks around campus. After graduation, we supported each other through the next phases of our lives. I worked entry-level hospital positions, while Thomas attended law school. Those years were tough but sweet, living in a tiny apartment, counting pennies, dreaming of the future we'd build together. When he passed the bar exam, we celebrated like we'd won the lottery. In many ways, it felt like we had. We married at 25, a modest ceremony with close friends and family. Amanda was 16 then, rolling her eyes at everything but grudgingly serving as my maid of honor. Our parents beamed with pride, especially at Thomas, the promising young attorney their daughter had snagged. The years passed quickly as we built our life together. Thomas joined a respected law firm and began climbing the ranks. I worked my way up through hospital administration, eventually becoming the chief operations officer at Portland Memorial. We bought our first home, then our second, each one bigger and in a better neighborhood than the last. By our 15th anniversary, we were living in an exclusive community with a view of the mountains, the kind of home I couldn't have imagined growing up. Children were always part of our plan, but life had other ideas. 3 miscarriages in our early 30s left emotional scars. By 40, after 2 failed rounds of IVF that drained our savings and my spirit, we accepted our childless state. Thomas seemed to take it in stride, focusing on his career and our comfortable lifestyle. I buried myself in work, finding purpose in improving healthcare systems rather than raising a family. My sister Amanda's life took a different path. Always restless and impulsive, she married right out of high school to her boyfriend, Jerry, divorced by 23, remarried to a real estate agent named Paul at 25, divorced again by 30. Each time I was there to pick up the pieces, offering emotional and financial support. When she needed money for rent after her second divorce, I gave it to her. When she decided at 35 that she wanted to go to college, Thomas and I paid her tuition. "You're too generous with her," Thomas would say. "She needs to learn responsibility." But I couldn't turn my back on my only sister. Our parents had died in a car accident when she was 22, leaving me as her only real family. Despite her flaws, her ingratitude, the way she seemed to resent me even as she took my help, I couldn't abandon her. Thomas's law career flourished over the decades. By our 25th anniversary, he was a senior partner at his firm, specializing in corporate law. His clients included some of the biggest businesses in the Northwest. The hours were long, but the compensation was excellent. We took luxury vacations, owned 3 cars, and never worried about bills. From the outside, our life looked perfect. But something had shifted in our marriage over the last few years. Thomas was working later than ever, taking business trips that seemed to multiply on his calendar. Our physical intimacy had dwindled, but I blamed it on its age, on busy schedules, on the natural evolution of a long marriage. When he couldn't make dinner plans, when he missed events important to me, when he seemed distracted and distant, I made excuses for him. He works so hard, I'd tell my friends when they noticed his absence. That's the price of success. I was busy too, overseeing a hospital merger, serving on community boards, maintaining our social obligations. It was easy to ignore the warning signs when I barely had time to breathe between responsibilities. And I was planning something special, something that kept me focused on the future rather than the troubling present. My Aunt Meredith, my mother's sister, had passed away 6 months earlier. We'd been close when I was young, but distance and busy lives had created a gap in later years. To my complete surprise, she had left me her entire estate, a sum that amounted to $2.3 million. It was an amount that could change everything, offering possibilities I'd never considered before. I decided not to tell Thomas immediately. Our 30th anniversary coincided with my 55th birthday, and I wanted to announce it then to surprise him with the possibilities it opened up. Maybe early retirement traveling the world, or starting the charitable foundation we'd talked about years ago but never pursued. I planned an elaborate celebration at the Pinnacle, Portland's most exclusive event venue. Thomas insisted on paying for it all, which surprised me given his usual frugality regarding social events. "It's 30 years, Jean," he said. "We should celebrate in style." I spent months planning every detail, from the champagne selection to the custom floral arrangements featuring the lilies from my bridal bouquet 3 decades earlier. I wanted everything to be perfect for what I imagined would be a new beginning for us. I didn't know then that Thomas had his own plans for that night, or that the foundation of my marriage had already crumbled beneath my feet. The first hint that something was wrong came on a rainy Tuesday in March, 3 months before our anniversary. I had borrowed Thomas's phone to make a call when my battery died during a hospital board meeting. A text notification popped up as I was about to dial. "Missed you already. Lunch was amazing. Can't wait for tonight." The message was from someone named M.R. Office, supposedly a work contact, but the tone sent a chill through me. I opened the message thread before I could stop myself scrolling through weeks of exchanges. They weren't explicitly romantic, but the familiarity, the inside jokes, the late-night timing of many messages all felt wrong. I put the phone down, my hands shaking. It could be innocent, I told myself. A colleague, a friend. Thomas had many female associates at the firm, but the knot in my stomach suggested otherwise. That evening, I casually mentioned borrowing his phone. "Hope you don't mind. Mine died during the board meeting." Thomas's face tightened momentarily before he composed himself. "No problem. Did you reach whoever you needed to call?" "Yes," I lied, watching him carefully. "By the way, someone named M.R. from your office texted. Seemed important." "Probably Marissa," he said smoothly. "She's a new paralegal working on the Henderson case with me. Nothing urgent." He changed the subject quickly, asking about my day, more attentive than he'd been in months. But that night I noticed he took his phone into the bathroom when he showered, something he'd never done before. Over the next few weeks, I began noticing other discrepancies. Credit card statements showed charges at restaurants I'd never heard of at times when Thomas claimed to be working late. A receipt for a woman's bracelet from an upscale jewelry store fell from his jacket pocket while I was doing laundry. He claimed it was for his assistant's 10-year work anniversary, but when I called the firm on some pretense and spoke with her, she mentioned being with the company for only 7 years. Friends began acting strangely around me too. Margaret, the wife of Thomas's law partner, avoided eye contact at our monthly book club. When I mentioned Thomas's late nights, conversations would awkwardly shift to other topics. At a dinner party, I overheard 2 women from our social circle quickly stop talking when I approached their expressions a mix of pity and discomfort. When I finally confronted Thomas about my suspicions, he turned them back on me with practiced skill. "You're being paranoid, Jean," he said, his voice a perfect blend of concern and irritation. "Is this menopause? Should you talk to your doctor?" "Don't patronize me," I said. "These aren't hormones. Something's different." He sighed dramatically. "I'm under tremendous pressure with the Westridge merger. I'm sorry if I've been distant, but accusing me of— What exactly are you accusing me of?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but something doesn't feel right. After 30 years, I deserve more trust than this." He looked wounded, making me feel guilty for questioning him. Maybe you should talk to someone professional about these insecurities. I apologized, feeling foolish. This was Thomas, my husband of nearly 3 decades, the man who had held me through miscarriages and my parents' deaths. He wouldn't betray me, would he? But 2 days later, while searching for a tax document in his home office, I found a hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown dated for a night when Thomas had told me he was at a conference in Seattle. The receipt showed room service for 2, a bottle of champagne. My sister Amanda's behavior had changed recently, too. Always struggling financially despite my help, she suddenly had new clothes, a new hairstyle, and seemed to have money for luxuries she couldn't previously afford. When I asked about her improved circumstances, she mentioned consulting work, but was vague about details. Most suspicious was how she began asking about my anniversary party plans, showing unusual interest in my marriage when she'd always been dismissive of Thomas before. "Are you doing a big speech at the party?" she asked during a lunch I was paying for. "You should really acknowledge all Thomas has done for you." Her choice of words struck me as odd. All he had done for me, not what we had done for each other, as if I were the beneficiary in our partnership rather than an equal contributor. "Why the sudden interest in my marriage?" I asked. "Just want your big day to be special." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You deserve it after everything." That evening, I called Jordan Blake, a private investigator whose card I'd kept after he helped the hospital with an insurance fraud case. I told no one paid from my personal account and waited. Jordan's findings arrived in a plain manila envelope delivered to my private post office box, not our home address. I sat in my car in the post office parking lot, hands trembling as I opened it. The photographs were crisp, professional, undeniable. Thomas and a young woman with copper red hair, holding hands across restaurant tables, kissing in his car, entering a downtown apartment building together. Hotel lobbies in 3 different cities on dates that matched his supposed business trips. The final set showed Thomas with his hand resting possessively on her visibly pregnant belly. I drove to a park parked in a secluded spot and vomited into a paper bag I found in my glove compartment. When the physical sickness passed, a strange numbness took over. I read Jordan's detailed report with clinical detachment, as if it described strangers rather than my own life. Her name was Marissa Reynolds, 29, a paralegal who had joined Thomas's firm 18 months ago. According to Jordan's investigation, their affair had been ongoing for at least 14 months. She was approximately 6 months pregnant. Thomas had co-signed the lease on her luxury apartment and established a separate checking account from which he paid her expenses. Most damning was the evidence that Thomas had met with a divorce attorney 3 months earlier, one from a competing firm known for securing favorable settlements for husbands in high-asset divorces. I called Jordan from the park, my voice surprisingly steady. "Is there more?" I asked. "Mrs. Harrison, there's a connection I'm still investigating. I need another day or 2 to confirm." "What kind of connection?" He hesitated. "Between the mistress and someone else you know. I don't want to say more until I'm certain." That night, I couldn't eat or sleep. Thomas noticed my distraction but attributed it to stress over party planning. I watched him across the dinner table, this familiar stranger, and wondered how well I'd ever known him. The next morning, I began experiencing physical symptoms of my emotional trauma. Panic attacks left me gasping for breath in hospital bathroom stalls between meetings. I lost 5 pounds in a week, food turning to ash in my mouth. Sleep came in fitful bursts punctuated by nightmares. I began paying closer attention to our finances. Thomas had always handled the money, a division of labor that made sense given his expertise, but now I scrutinized everything. I discovered significant withdrawals from our joint accounts over the past year, totaling nearly $300,000. When confronted, Thomas claimed they were investments, but provided only vague details. "You've never cared about the financial minutiae before," he said, irritation seeping through his calm facade. "Why the sudden interest?" "Just trying to understand our complete financial picture before the anniversary." I said the lie coming easily now. I visited a divorce attorney of my own, Diana Levinson, recommended by a hospital board member who had survived a similar betrayal. She was direct, competent, and compassionate in exactly the right proportions. Based on what you've told me, your husband has been planning this for some time, Diana said after reviewing the financial documents I'd brought. The good news is that Oregon is an equitable distribution state, and these withdrawals will be factored into any settlement. The bad news is that he's got a head start. What about my inheritance? I asked. If you've kept it separate, not commingled with joint assets, it remains yours. Has your husband been involved with this money at all? No, I said. It's still in the estate account. I was going to surprise him with it at our anniversary. Diana's expression was grim. Keep it separate. In fact, if you haven't already transferred it to an account in your name only at a different bank than where you have joint accounts. I followed her advice that afternoon, moving the inheritance to a new account at a credit union across town. I also began gathering documents, copying tax returns, investment statements, property deeds, anything that would give me a complete picture of our marital assets. Jordan called the following day. Mrs. Harrison, are you sitting down? Just tell me, I said. Your sister Amanda, she's involved. My blood turned cold. Involved how? She's known about the affair from the beginning. In fact, according to my source at the firm, she introduced Thomas to Marissa at a firm holiday party last year. Your sister has been on your husband's payroll for at least 10 months. The betrayal redoubled. My husband and my sister, the only two people I had consistently supported through everything conspiring against me. There's more, Jordan continued. They've been meeting regularly at your sister's apartment. I've observed 3 such meetings in the past week alone. I need proof, I said, my voice hollow. Undeniable proof. I'll send the surveillance photos. And Mrs. Harrison, I can place audio equipment if you need more. Do it, I said without hesitation. The next day, I received a transcript of a conversation between Thomas and Amanda recorded in her apartment. Reading their words spoken when they thought no one was listening nearly broke me. Jean suspects something. Thomas's voice was clear on the recording Jordan provided. She's been asking about the accounts. She's not as stupid as she looks, my sister replied with a laugh that cut through me like a knife. But she trusts you completely. It's almost sad. I sat in my car outside Amanda's apartment building, listening through earbuds, watching the windows of her 3rd-floor unit, where my husband and sister were plotting against me. The party is perfect timing, Thomas continued. Once Marissa shows up visibly pregnant, Jean will cause a scene. With witnesses to her emotional instability, the divorce proceedings will favor me. Are you sure Marissa is on board? She seems nervous about confronting Jean publicly. She'll do what I say if she wants the financial support to continue. Besides, she wants me free of this marriage as much as I do. The baby is due in 3 months. My hand instinctively went to my stomach, remembering my own lost pregnancies, the children Thomas and I never had. Now he was starting a family with a woman half my age. And you're sure I'll get the cabin in the settlement? Amanda asked. I've always loved that place. Guaranteed. You've earned it helping me manage Jean all these years. Please, Amanda scoffed. Do you know how hard it's been watching her succeed at everything perfect, Jean, with her perfect career and perfect husband? Always so generous, so superior. Let me help you, Amanda. Let me fix your life, Amanda. God, it's been sickening. I gasped, tears finally breaking through my shock. My sister had resented me, while accepting my help had been waiting for an opportunity to hurt me. She did pay your rent for 3 years, Thomas said, amusement in his voice. And your college tuition. Small price to pay for putting up with her condescension. Anyway, this is much better compensation. The cabin plus the monthly consulting fee. Which, remember, ends after the divorce is finalized. Don't get too comfortable. Whatever. I've got other prospects. Speaking of which, does Jean have any idea about the firm money? There was a pause. No. The partners don't either. That stays between us. Pretty risky, Thomas, siphoning from the firm accounts. Only temporary. Once the divorce is settled, I'll replace it. The timing just got tight with the baby coming. They were discussing what sounded like embezzlement. Thomas had apparently been taking money from his law firm, not just our marital assets. The revelation should have shocked me, but I was already beyond shock. What about the party? Amanda asked. Jean's been planning it for months. She thinks it's going to be this magical evening. She even bought a new dress, can you believe it? At her age. They laughed together, the sound of it slicing through my heart. Let her have her party, Thomas said. Let her think everything's perfect right up until Marissa walks in. The bigger the fall, the better. I want to see her face when she realizes everyone knows, when she understands she's been replaced. You're cold, Thomas. I like it. 30 years is a long time to feel trapped. I stayed after the miscarriages because leaving then would have looked bad. I stayed through her workaholic phase because the lifestyle was comfortable. But I'm 57 now. I want freedom, a new family, a wife who puts me first. And doesn't have saggy boobs, Amanda added, laughing. Marissa understands what a wife should be. Jean was always too independent, too career-focused. I'm done playing second fiddle to her hospital administration kingdom. I sat frozen listening to this man I'd loved for 3 decades reduce our life together to a prison sentence he'd endured hearing my sister mock the body that had tried and failed to carry children. They continued talking, discussing how to minimize my share of the assets, how Amanda would help Thomas through the divorce by testifying to my supposed emotional problems, my alleged neglect of our marriage. They talked about me as if I were an obstacle, not a person who had loved them both. When they finally moved away from the window, I started my car with shaking hands. Instead of confrontation, instead of the screaming fury that boiled inside me, I chose a different path. I drove to the office of Diana Levinson, my divorce attorney. I have evidence, I said, placing the recording device on her desk, and I'm ready to fight back. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone I barely recognized, someone stronger and more strategic than the trusting woman I'd been before. With Diana's guidance, I documented everything. We filed the divorce papers, but put a hold on serving Thomas, timing it for maximum advantage. I met with a financial advisor, recommended by Diana, restructuring my accounts and protecting my inheritance. We discussed my financial future, creating a plan that would maintain my standard of living without Thomas's income. Diana also connected me with Thomas's law firm's biggest competitor, sharing evidence of his financial misconduct. They were keenly interested, particularly in the suggestion that Thomas had been misappropriating firm funds. This isn't just about your divorce, Diana explained. If he's been taking money from the firm, that's potentially criminal. His partners will want to know before they're implicated. I hesitated briefly. Despite everything destroying Thomas's career felt extreme. Then I remembered his words, the bigger the fall, the better. Do what you have to do, I told Diana. Meanwhile, I continued party preparations as if nothing were wrong. I confirmed the menu, approved the floral arrangement, selected music with the band. To everyone watching, I was simply an excited wife planning a milestone celebration. But privately, I was preparing a very different kind of presentation. Working with the venue's audiovisual team, I arranged for screens to be set up around the ballroom, ostensibly for a photo montage of our 30 years together. What would actually be displayed was something altogether different. I recorded conversations with my sister, carefully steering her into admissions about her role in Thomas's plan. Amanda, eager to boast about her cleverness, needed little prompting. You seem distracted lately, she said during one of our lunch meetings. Is everything okay with the party planning? Just want everything to be perfect, I replied, my phone recording in my purse. Thomas deserves a wonderful celebration after 30 years. Absolutely, she agreed, a smile playing at her lips. He's been such a devoted husband. I've been thinking a lot about our vows lately, I said. That promise to stay together through better or worse. Well, marriage evolves, Amanda said dismissively. People change. What matters is that you've had a good run. Had you make it sound like it's ending, Amanda flushed slightly. Figure of speech. I just meant 30 years is impressive these days. I leaned forward. Amanda, if you knew something about Thomas, something important you'd tell me, wouldn't you? As my sister. Her eyes couldn't meet mine. Of course. But everything's fine. You're overthinking things as usual. As usual. Do I overthink things often? You know what I mean. You always analyze everything to death. Just enjoy your party. It's going to be quite memorable. The smile that accompanied these words chilled me to the bone. I'm sure it will be, I agreed. I also met with Laura Matthews, my closest friend since college, and the one person I trusted completely. I told her everything, showed her the evidence, and asked for her help. Those backstabbing snakes, she said, fury in her eyes. What do you need me to do? Be my support at the party, I said, and help me with the special presentation. Laura, who worked in marketing, had connections with freelance videographers. Together, we created a compelling visual narrative using Jordan's photos and recordings, my documented evidence, and financial records. The final product was devastating in its clarity. The night before the party, I barely slept. Not from anxiety or sorrow, but from a strange electric anticipation. For the first time in months, I felt powerful rather than victimized. I had taken control of my narrative. Morning brought a sense of calm resolve. I spent hours at an exclusive spa, enjoying treatments I'd booked months earlier for very different reasons. My hair was styled elegantly, my makeup applied to enhance rather than mask my 55 years. The new dress I'd purchased, which Amanda had mocked, was a deep sapphire blue that complemented my eyes and silver-streaked hair. When I looked in the mirror before leaving for the venue, I saw someone I recognized from long ago, before compromise and complacency had dulled her edges. I saw the strong, confident woman I had once been and would be again. Thomas came home to change, complimenting my appearance with practiced charm. If he noticed anything different in my demeanor, he didn't mention it. He was distracted checking his phone frequently, no doubt coordinating the evening's intended humiliation with Amanda and Marissa. Ready for our big night? He asked, adjusting his tie in the mirror. More than you can imagine, I replied. The pinnacle looked magical that evening, transformed by thousands of tiny lights, elaborate floral arrangements, and elegant table settings. The event staff had executed my vision perfectly, from the champagne fountain to the custom ice sculpture depicting two intertwined hearts. Guests began arriving at 7, congratulating us on 30 years of marriage. College friends, hospital colleagues, neighbors, Thomas's law partners and their wives, all dressed in their finest, all smiling at what they assumed was a perfect couple, celebrating a remarkable milestone. I played my role flawlessly, accepting congratulations with gracious smiles, squeezing Thomas's hand affectionately when appropriate, laughing at the right moments during speeches from well-wishers. If I seemed especially radiant, people attributed it to the significance of the occasion. Thomas appeared increasingly nervous as the evening progressed. His eyes darted to the entrance repeatedly, his smile becoming strained. At 8:30 during the appetizer course, his phone buzzed with a text. After reading it, he excused himself, claiming a quick client call. Laura caught my eye from across the room, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I nodded almost imperceptibly. Everything was unfolding as anticipated. At precisely 8:45, a murmur spread through the crowd. I turned toward the entrance, my heart pounding despite my preparation. And there they were, Amanda in a tight red dress I had paid for during our last shopping trip, and beside her, Marissa Reynolds, her copper hair styled elegantly, her pregnancy unmistakable in a form-fitting emerald green maternity dress. The room fell silent, 200 guests frozen in collective shock. Thomas, who had returned to my side moments earlier, went rigid. His face drained of color as he realized the timing was all wrong. This was supposed to happen during his speech, when he could control the narrative. Now Marissa and Amanda stood uncertainly in the doorway, while all eyes bounced between them and us. I squeezed Thomas's arm gently. Isn't that your colleague from the office and my sister? How lovely that they've arrived together. Thomas stared at me, confusion replacing his panic. This wasn't the reaction he had anticipated. Where were the tears, the public breakdown that would paint me as unstable? I released his arm and walked toward the newcomers, aware of every eye following my progress across the ballroom. Amanda's smug expression faltered as I approached. Marissa looked terrified, one hand protectively over her rounded belly. "Amanda, darling, and you must be Marissa. I'm so glad you could join us." I embraced them both, feeling Marissa's baby bump press against me, an intimacy that would have destroyed me weeks earlier, but now left me oddly untouched. "Jean," Amanda stammered. I ran into Marissa outside, and we came in together." "How convenient," I said, smiling. "Thomas will be so pleased his colleague could join our celebration." I led them to our table, indicating empty seats that had mysteriously appeared. The room began to buzz with whispered conversations, guests trying to interpret the bizarre tableau. Thomas approached slowly, his lawyer's composure reasserting itself. "Jean," he said, his voice low and controlled, "perhaps we should speak privately." "Nonsense," I replied brightly. "I'm about to make my speech. Everyone's waiting." Before he could stop me, I walked to the small stage where the band had taken a break. The lead singer handed me the microphone with a conspiratorial wink, one of several venue staff Laura had enlisted to ensure our plan proceeded smoothly. "Good evening, everyone." I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "Thank you all for joining us on this significant occasion. 30 years of marriage is indeed something to acknowledge." The room quieted, guests settling into their seats, anticipating a traditional anniversary speech. Thomas remained standing, frozen halfway between our table and the stage, uncertainty evident in his posture. "Marriage is built on many things," I continued. "Trust, honesty, mutual respect. When those foundations crumble, what remains?" A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the speech they were expecting. "I've recently discovered what remains: strength, self-respect, and the clarity that comes with finally seeing the truth." I nodded to Laura, who pressed a button on her phone. The screens around the room illuminated, displaying the first of our carefully curated images: Thomas and Marissa entering her apartment building, his hand possessively on the small of her back. For those who don't know her, this is Marissa Reynolds, Thomas's paralegal. I gestured to where she sat, her face pale with shock. "She's also the mother of his child, due in approximately 3 months. The gasps were audible. Thomas started toward the stage, but 2 of his law partners intercepted him, their expressions thunderous. The screens changed to financial documents, highlighted sections showing substantial withdrawals from our accounts and questionable transactions from his firm's client trust accounts. Thomas has been planning to leave our marriage for some time, as these financial records indicate. What his law partners might find particularly interesting are the transactions from the firm's accounts. I believe the technical term is embezzlement." Thomas's senior partner stood up abruptly, gesturing for Thomas to join him in the corner of the room. The screens changed again now, showing Amanda in Thomas's car, the 2 of them laughing together. "And this is my sister Amanda, who has been helping Thomas conceal his affair and plan my public humiliation in exchange for financial compensation and the promise of our vacation property in her name after the divorce." Amanda jumped to her feet. "You're twisting everything. This is crazy." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "Should I play the recording of you discussing how much you've resented me while accepting my financial support? Or perhaps the one where you and Thomas plan to use this very party to announce his new relationship, deliberately humiliating me in front of all our friends?" The final images appeared on screen, copies of divorce papers filed by me, not Thomas, documentation of my protected inheritance, evidence that Thomas's firm was now investigating him. The divorce Thomas has been planning will indeed happen, but not on his terms. The papers were filed last week. His law partners are aware of the financial discrepancies, and the $2.3 million inheritance I received from my aunt, which I had planned to surprise Thomas with tonight, as an anniversary gift, remains solely mine, protected from divorce proceedings by state law. I looked directly at Thomas, meeting his eyes for what I knew would be one of the last times. You wanted a public scene, Thomas. You wanted to see me fall apart in front of everyone we know. Instead, you get to watch me walk away with my dignity intact. I turned to address our stunned guests. I apologize for the unconventional entertainment this evening. The dinner is paid for, the bar is open, and the band will continue playing. Please enjoy the remainder of your night. I, however, will be leaving. My flight to Paris departs in the morning, the first step in the new life I'm creating for myself. I placed the microphone on the stand and descended from the stage. The room remained silent as I walked toward the exit. Laura fell into step beside me, linking her arm with mine. As we passed Thomas, still cornered by his furious partners, he reached for my arm. Jean, wait. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. I stopped briefly. It's exactly what I think, but thank you. For what? He asked, confusion evident. For showing me what I'm capable of when everything falls apart. It's quite liberating. I continued walking, hearing Amanda calling my name, but I didn't turn back. Outside, a car waited to take me home, where packed suitcases were ready for my morning departure. As we pulled away from the Pinnacle, I saw Thomas emerge looking lost, as several guests departed shaking their heads in disgust. Are you okay? Laura asked, squeezing my hand. For the first time in weeks, my answer was completely honest. I actually am. The weeks and months that followed were a study in rebirth. I settled temporarily in Paris, renting a small apartment in Montmartre with a view of the city's rooftops. Each morning I woke to the sound of church bells and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery below. Each evening, I watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded me life still held beauty. The divorce proceeded efficiently, handled primarily by Diana back in Portland. Thomas, facing potential criminal charges for the firm's missing funds, was in no position to contest anything. His partners had placed him on administrative leave, pending an investigation. According to Laura's updates, Marissa had moved back with her parents in Seattle, reportedly reconsidering her relationship with Thomas after seeing his true character revealed at the party. Amanda sent multiple emails and voicemails, alternating between angry accusations and tearful apologies. I responded to none of them. Some bridges once burned should remain in ashes. The emotional aftermath wasn't as simple as my dignified exit from the party might have suggested. There were nights I cried until dawn, mourning not just my failed marriage, but the 3 decades of memories now tainted by betrayal. There were days when anger consumed me, when I imagined confronting Thomas and Amanda with all the hurt they had caused. But gradually, those moments became less frequent. I found a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma, a compassionate Frenchwoman named Dr. Benoit, who helped me process my grief and anger in healthy ways. The goal is not to eliminate the pain, she told me during one session. It is to integrate it into your new life without allowing it to define you. I took her words to heart, working consciously to build a life that acknowledged but transcended my loss. I volunteered at an international hospital, using my administrative expertise to help improve their systems. I took French classes, made new friends, explored museums and cafes, rediscovered passions for art and music that had been set aside during my work-focused years. 6 months after leaving Portland, I found a permanent home, a charming stone cottage in the French countryside near Bordeaux. With my inheritance and divorce settlement, financial concerns were minimal. I established a foundation supporting women rebuilding their lives after relationship trauma, finding purpose and helping others navigate paths similar to my own. The hardest part was making peace with my childlessness. Seeing Thomas so eager to start a family with Marissa reopened that old wound. But eventually, I found unexpected healing through mentoring young healthcare administrators at a nearby university, channeling my nurturing instincts into supporting their professional development. During my second autumn in France, I received an email from Jordan, my former private investigator. Thomas had pleaded guilty to reduced charges of financial misappropriation, avoiding prison but losing his law license. Marissa had given birth to a son, but was raising him as a single mother. Amanda had been forced to sell her condo and move to a smaller city where living costs were lower. Her finances crippled after Thomas stopped supporting her. I felt no satisfaction at their misfortunes, only a quiet certainty that justice had worked its natural course. Their actions, not my revenge, had determined their fates. On the anniversary of my departure from Portland, I sat in my garden watching the sunset with a glass of local wine. I reflected on the woman I had been a year earlier, desperately trying to save a marriage that existed only in my imagination. I thought about the woman I had become stronger and more authentic than I had been in decades. Betrayal had broken me open, but the breaking had released parts of myself that had been imprisoned in the comfortable cage of my marriage. At 56, I had discovered that starting over wasn't just possible, it was exhilarating. The lesson wasn't that trust is foolish, but that trusting yourself must come first. It wasn't that love is dangerous, but that loving someone who doesn't truly see you is. I had spent 30 years being the wife Thomas wanted rather than the woman I was meant to be. In losing him, I had found myself. As darkness settled over my garden, I raised my glass in a silent toast to unexpected freedom, to second chances, to the beautiful uncertainty of a future entirely my own. The betrayal that was meant to destroy me had instead become the catalyst for my rebirth. And for that, paradoxical as it seemed, I was genuinely grateful. What about you? Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that even the deepest betrayals can lead to new beginnings. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, it's never too late to start writing a new chapter in your own story.